May I have a motion to start the meeting?
Motion, we start the meeting.
Second?
Pat, I think you have to second the meeting. Maybe just raise your hand.
I
All
don't
in,
know. I second. Yeah.
great. All in favor? Aye.
I.
Okay. So I'd like to first start with reviewing the minutes from January 13th, since we didn't have quorum last month. So I'd like to review both the January and February meeting minutes. So was there any questions um about the January minutes? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes from January and February 2025.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I will second it.
All in favor?
I.
Thank you. All right. Um, is there any resident or citizen participation? I don't see any. Okay. If any does pop up, I will notice that again. So review items from the February board packet. We'd like to first start with the executive director's report.
Okay, so I just wasn't sure if there was anything. So for the review of the February meeting, I just didn't know if anybody had any questions who wasn't at the meeting
Oh,
about that packet.
right. I didn't have any comments or questions down about the February packet.
Okay. And we included the minutes even though they weren't an official meeting, so if you had anything. Um, but I will dive into my report for this month. So, it has been a very busy month. We were finishing our tax credit audits, which I'm pretty sure that we have everything in at this point. I can't imagine, I don't think, oh, I think this might be Gary. So I'm gonna take that very quickly. Sorry.
Okay.
He's having internet issues, so he's gonna try his best to do that. So we submitted, I think we've submitted everything for our audits. We got everything in really early, but there's always like straggling things. I think most of you know, David DeAngelis has resigned from his position as Section 8 and Grants Administrator as of March 4th. He had been with BHP for 20 years. In preparation for his retirement date, we had actually planned to post the job pretty close to when he had given his notice of a shorter retirement. And so we were in a good position to begin that hiring process. We were very fortunate. We had an applicant who actually works at another housing authority that's farther away, but they had recently relocated to Vermont. They bought a house here and they had applied and they were offered the position and they're starting on the 7th. So yeah, we definitely lucked out and she seems absolutely wonderful. So we're really, really, really excited. Um, so that's great news. And of course, we miss David. He was a wonderful part of the organization for so long. It's definitely, it will be hard to fill his shoes. He was so great. So I think the board should think a little bit about how we may want to recognize him, maybe at the annual meeting. So just planting that seed. And other than that, James is here. We have been working on the draft budget for fiscal year 25-26. Our tax credits are expiring at A.W. Richards, so I've been working with Evernorth on that. We have a loan that will come due, so we're reapplying for another loan to cover that loan. And we've been working on other, just trying to work with them on how we want to proceed with this property going forward. So I will keep you posted with that. We need to approve the I would need to have the board approve the operating cost adjustment factors, so they will go into effect as of April 1st. They are, every year annually, we've decided that we're going to adjust for the OCAF every year on April 1st. We could do it on the anniversary date of the property, but we feel like that's gonna be confusing and just, I think we feel like it'll just be easier to just do it all at once a year. A lot of our residents have family members that live at other properties, and like it just gets really overwhelming for people. And so we figured if we'll do it all on April 1, that'll be easier. They all have different anniversary dates. So two of the properties have the same amounts, and then two other properties have different amounts because they're a little bit further behind. We talked about this last year a little bit and explained it. But it's really important that we adjust for the OCAF every year. I know it's hard for residents, they're like, you're raising my rent again. But as you can see, of the 204 households, only 192 of that, 192 see no increase in their portion of their rent. So 12 households do have to meet the OCAF, and their rent will go up. However, most of those people, their income is way over 30% of anyway. So while I know that that's hard for folks, it's definitely something that we just really need to do. We need to do it in order to keep, to be able to get as much money as we can to take care of our properties. So and I think that's pretty much it for my report. Do you have any questions about those things? Yep.
I'm looking at the rent, but looking what we have to pay for rent with all of our utilities. Now, if we lived in Brattleboro, you'd be paying almost $1,600 a month for our one-bedroom apartment in Brattleboro. So, this is nothing compared to what you would have to pay if you weren't in housing.
Yeah. And as I said, the people who are paying that, most people are just paying a portion of that. They're not paying the full amount.
Right.
And those that have to pay the full amount, their income is above what the 30% is. So they're not paying 30% of their income. They're paying less than 30% of their income because the 30% of their income is higher, right? So as much as I have compassion for that, I think Pat's right. These rents, even our Section 8 for your market rents are much higher than these. And so, even if you were in the community and you were paying the fair market rent, it would be much higher than this. So for everything included, it is really the best deal in town.
Thank you, Christine. Any other questions before we make a motion? No? Okay. So, may I have a motion to increase RAD contract rents on April 1st, 2025 as listed below, or as mentioned. For Hayes Court, should I mention specifically each one?
It's just for all the RAD properties. That's okay.
For all the RAD properties.
Yeah.
May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to increase RAD property contract rents on April 1st, 2025, as we discussed.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No? All right, great. Thank you. Okay. So the program data review, Michelle, did you want to point anything out about these?
I love them, and I think that people have moved things around a little, which is a really good sign that like they mean something. No, I mean, I think they're doing what I was hoping, which was to be able to sort of see things a little bit over time. And as we get more and more months in there, we'll be able to have a better idea if this is, if we're seeing like normal variations, or if there's anything that, we need to worry about, or more importantly, that Christine needs to worry about. I hope it's helpful for you, Christine.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's nice to have everything in one place. Like when I need to answer a question, I'm not like having to figure that out. I know that this is up to date. And you're right. Like it's hard because we've only had a couple of months. I mean, some of these we're really putting in March data, mid-March or but I think once we get to like, after we've done this for a year, I think it's going to be really, um, I think it's going to be really helpful for us.
And it's things you've been already tracking, so it's not more work, right? It's just
Yeah.
putting it all in one place.
Yeah, putting it all in one place, right?
Great. Thank you.
I really love looking at that second graph that for the LEAP. I think it's LEAP. Oh, now I have to refresh my memory here. Which one? Well, all the program activities. I thought that was a neat way of looking at those. And I can only imagine that it's like Tai Chi or Bone Builders or something. That's that 38 at Canal House. I just thought that was pretty neat. You can see places where people are doing things, and staff is really involved there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's life there.
We started doing Tai Chi down here. There's two of us, but we've started.
That's good. That's going to keep you from falling.
Yeah, it is really helpful. And so the second section, which is all the services programs, those are really put together by the team. They have a software system called Apricot, and they can put all this data. So Matt has taken over the portion of David DeAngelis's role as the grant manager. So he's now overseeing a lot of the grants. And so he's able to put all this information in one place, which is great. So if there's other things that you really are like looking at or you're like, oh, we could really use this or clarifying a little bit, maybe once we get a little further in, we can go in there. And like, if you're like, we really want more information about, what are the 11 complaints, what categories are they in? And I met with Elizabeth Bridgewater from Wyndham Windsor this morning, and she's come up with a way of tracking all their police data. So like anytime there's a police call to their properties, and so she's going to share the mechanism they're using. And I think we'll use the same. And that way, like when we put out information, we're both doing it in the same way. And I think that will make it so that we're comparing apples to apples.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions about the occupancy director's report? That's the green one.
Looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, I will say I reported this in the last month. I'm grateful because some of our rent is our rent payments are going up. And I think that's because the property managers have been better at, as hard as it is, I know residents hate it, but they've been sending letters when there's an amount due. And this isn't to shame people, and this isn't to make people upset. It's really because we were finding that people would say to us when they were really behind, they'd say, I had no idea. I didn't know, I didn't realize I didn't pay for 3 months. I lost track of it, right? And so now there's like no discrepancy. And, people hate getting that letter. And I know it's upsetting for people because most people pay their rent on time. So when they're behind, they're like, I'm not in trouble, give this person a hard time. But I think it has really helped. And we used to do that before COVID. We were really good at it. We started to fall behind during COVID. We had a lot of situations that were going on based on the VRAP program and people not paying their rent having that program pay their rent instead of them paying it. And so I think we just really wanted to get back on track, and it feels like we're making progress, which I think is really great. And also it prevents people from getting so far behind that they can't catch up. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep people housed. We're not trying to we're not trying to make people feel like they're in trouble.
Thank you. All right, so I'm moving on to the resident services newsletters and calendars. There's a lot here, a lot of really great information. It's great to see what the residents get, and all the community resources that were included in that. Some of the other agencies that I've seen, listing what they do, and that was really great. I just felt like it was both localized and national, so it was a really nice connection.
Yeah, the Humane Society program is so successful. People really love it. It's such a cool program that they're coordinating with the Humane Society, and they're coming out to treat animals right on site. It is my favorite program that we've offered in a really long time. It feels really collaborative and innovative, and I think it makes a huge difference to residents. Would you agree, Pat?
Yes, because it was kind of noisy, but that meant that I didn't have to run up the Humane Society to get my cat a shot. Everything was done here, but of course, they made only one person at a time because an animal might get upset. But it was a noisy affair, but we had a lot of barking and meowing. But it was worth because there are a lot of residents that cannot get out to a vet, well, can't afford a veterinarian or can't get the Humane Society. It's a ways up. So they really liked it. I didn't know who had pets till we saw them all downstairs. It was good for them because they got their shots, and it was good.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program. All right, are we ready for the financial review? Yeah, okay. So the 2025 monthly comparable, was there anything that was noteworthy? Anything to point out? Any comments or questions?
So this is January's. James has sent February, which we received, I think, last week, but it was after the board packets went out. Uh, you know, Nothing, I mean, outside of the fact that the snow removal is still going to be showing up, which will be a pretty big expense. We had a lot of snow this year. That's a concern, but it feels unfortunately like something that we have no control over. And we had a lot of snow. We had a lot of snow events with a lot of ice, and it was just, we had a lot, that's going to be an expense that I think we're going to see as we start putting those numbers in. Other than that, James and I really were looking at the budget. I mean, there's real concerns about A.W. Richards. That continues. That's something that both Evernorth and I am aware of. We're working on it. But it's a huge challenge. I think other than that, we're seeing increases in all the expenses, things like electricity. We had a cold winter, so we saw an increase in our electrical costs. Um, and but nothing that's so far out of whack that it, it feels I think in the year to date, we're actually under for electric, but I have a feeling that's going to go over once we process the February bills. Um,
Christine, where is the snow removal line? What is
I
that
don't know
coming?
if it actually is on. James, where do you keep the snow removal? Do you just keep it under the
It's
Contract costs?
Yeah, snow removal is not a separate line on on the BHA's books. It's actually in contract costs.
Okay.
And we could put it as a line item if you want for, but I think that's why you'll see our contract costs are really up or high.
I don't necessarily need it myself. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know what you were talking, where you were seeing that.
Realize down here they make two or three sweeps through to maintain the roadway so that you can get in and out if rescue or anything needs. So they maintain the road pretty much. And if all the cars were out in the parking lot, they could do, they do what they can with an empty parking space. So they do come continually just to make sure that the roadway is clear. So if an emergency vehicle had to get through, they could. And then everybody moves, and then they come back and they do the complete job. So,
If you were to go to the RAD combined comparative, it's like the 4th page in, you would notice that contract costs are about $70,000 over budget. And I think that's what Christine is pointing to, that in total it's over by 70 already. Of that amount, it's probably a significant amount is probably snow, and it's only going to get bigger once we process March's bills. And as Christine stated, it's kind of hard to, there are some costs the board and management can do their best to control. There are others that you're at the whim of, I hate to say God, but you're at the whim of Mother Nature.
right.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if you get, 40 days of snow, there isn't much we can do about it. And we can't build a budget with the idea that we're going to have to spend $500,000 on snow, because then the budget doesn't balance. Yeah. So there has to be some understanding that we put in a budget, we hope it's enough for snow, and then if we have a bad winter, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yes, that was going to be one of my questions. Is there a way, or do organizations like aside from just budgeting some more, like try to get a better idea of like what are the weather, we're going to see more extreme weather events, like is there a predictive, something out there, maybe floods or winds, or everybody's just sort of budgeting some more and we're all crossing our fingers.
Unfortunately, it's just one of those things that, again, it's one of those costs of doing business that we unfortunately don't have control over. And I've seen it in a lot of agencies, whether they're down here in Massachusetts or up in Vermont. I know a lot of towns in my neck of the wood that are bankrupt. Well, I shouldn't say bankrupt, but again, they just put a small amount in snow because there's just no way balancing the budget if they actually put in an amount they think it's going to cost. So, no, there isn't as much we can do. All we can do is try to control most of the costs we can, and then hope that we luck out one year. And it's one of those things where maybe 2 or 3 years we have bad years, we hit into reserves, and hopefully one year we have a good year where we budgeted $80,000 for snow, we only used 20, and therefore we kind of recoup 2 or 3 years worth of snow money. But for on a year-by-year basis, when it comes to budgeting, it's kind of tough to predict now.
And like, there's a lot that goes into snow. It's like we have to haul snow away from properties, because if we don't, we'll have flooding. If we get rainstorms, we'll have, and we also have nowhere to put it. There's we have people who need to get out to go to doctor's appointments. I mean, we did have a slip and fall this year where someone went out, we had a really big icy storm. It wasn't, we couldn't clear it fast enough, and people had to go out to their appointment, and then we had someone fall. It's just like, it's a really hard thing. I mean, we could have people going out 8 times a day and it's not going to be clear.
Yeah.
And we just don't, the town, you saw what happened in the town. People were screaming because there was so much snow, and it's like people forgot that we actually get a lot of snow sometimes. It's like, it's really hard to manage that. It's not going to look like Florida. on a Monday if it snows on a Sunday. It's just not. Like we're not going to be able to get rid of all the snow. It's like, and I think people have a hard time with that. And yeah, and so we have, we have a lot of liability in terms of our properties. We have a lot of walkways. We have a lot of area to cover, and it's not inexpensive. And we used to do a lot of it in-house, which meant we were taking on all that liability ourselves, and we would have guys get hurt on the staff, and then we wouldn't have people for maintenance. And so, I mean, I think that's something the board, if we want to look at snow contracts, we're in the middle of a 3-year snow contract to relook at that. We have tried both, but it seems like when we have our maintenance guys doing it, then they can't fix something else. They're stuck for like literally days doing this. And then things aren't getting, we'll have like a hot water heater overflowing, and then we have that, so we have to really think about how we want to do this going forward. But there's no right way to do it. You just pray that it doesn't snow. As unfortunate as it is. And our guys will go out and they'll sand and they'll salt and they'll do a lot of preventative stuff ahead of time of a storm. But we had a tricky winter. We had a lot of very cold weather. We had a lot of ice and we had a lot of snow. We haven't had that much in years. I'd say in almost 8 years looking at our snow budget. We do track every storm. So we keep a folder of every storm. We print out every report for every day. We compare that with our with billing, and so we do have records. So if we ever really wanted to sit down and look at that for look at 5 or 6 years, we could do that. But I do think it's a really hard thing to predict.
I would say 20 years because I've been here 19. And I would say it's been 20 years. Now, I grew up and this happened 2 or 3 times a month. It was nothing. Now, this year was nothing, if you grew up here. But I remember, I think we moved here in 2005 at the end. So I say somewhere around there when we had to do our own shoveling. It's been pretty close to 20 years that we haven't had this, since we've had as much snow. It was bad. So it's been a good 20 years.
A slightly different thing. I wonder if I would be curious to know more about A.W. Richards, maybe not now, but maybe there's another time where we could like hear more about what it is that's really the trouble there. And it sounds like you've got some ideas around that, and not to be the decision maker, but just to maybe just understand that a little better.
Yeah. I think in a very short, synopsis is that when the building was set up, the way that the tax credits were set up and the payment standards, it didn't cover the cost of the building. So the building has been in a deficit since the beginning when it opened 15 years ago. And so now that the tax credits are expired, and there's some really big problems in the building in terms of the HVAC system. It was never fully functional. And so we've been doing a lot to try to maintain the building the best we can, but it has always been in an extreme deficit. And if you walked in the building, it's lovely. I mean, you would think it's a really beautiful building. It's taken care of. I think we've done the best we can, but it is we can't, the rents don't cover the cost of the building. And so now that the tax credits are expiring, we are working with Evernorth to decide how we want to go forward to the next phase, and if we, how we want to proceed with this. So we're hoping that we can come up with a plan that will cover, that we could get more money so that we could do some of these big, we're applying for funds to get grants to, do the HVAC system. I mean, these are huge costs. So, yeah. So that's in a nutshell. Unless, James, you want to share something else differently, but that's sort of my understanding of the history of this building that we've sort of inherited as a board and
No, I would say that covers most of it. I mean, I wasn't here. I wasn't actually involved when Richards was first taken on by Brattleboro, so I don't have a true understanding of the numbers when they first started. But I've seen very few of these projects, AWR being one of them, that are this poor. And usually what I've seen is when they're this poor, it was poorly, either was poorly constructed or it was poorly budgeted. And what I guess I'd say is that along the way, numbers were forced to make it work. And I think true estimates of operating costs were not actually used, more of, well, we'll get it to work if we use these numbers. And so I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I had A.W. Richards is one of two that I have that are, I hate to use the word dog, but poorly, they just don't spit out money like others. And the other one, it was just forced to be done, and the numbers I don't think were. In fact, I know the numbers weren't done very well, and the other one I know about. And the only other thing, like I said, that Christine mentioned is that unlike RCC and RCC2, where you have project-based Section 8 in there, you're getting higher rents. AWR has a few, but it doesn't have. It's not solely based on Section 8 rents, which are significantly higher than your tax credit rents or your 80%, whatever they. I don't know a lot about tax credits. I just know that the rents are usually not as high as Section 8. So because of that, you could have the same building with the same number of units built by the same contractor with the same HVAC system. But if there was 22 with Section 8 and 22 without Section 8, the ones with Section 8, the building's going to go fine. The other one's not. And it's just the building. It's just the way AWR was set up.
Well, that's a bummer.
It is a bummer. And it's not just us, we share this with Evernorth. Evernorth is the partner and the owner. This is one of the properties that's struggling the most for them as well. So they have a vested interest in figuring this out as well.
Any other questions or comments about this comparative? Or comparison, sorry. No? Okay. Any questions or comments about the summary checklisting that's always included in our reports? No? Okay. So, so I would like to review the proposed 2025 to 2026 budget.
So there was one section that we would want to take into executive session. It was in an envelope. I don't know. Did you get a separate envelope? Okay.
Do we need to go into executive session now, or?
We can now. I mean, we could now and then come out and talk about the budget further. Do you want to do
Like
that
as
really
a
quick?
whole?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah,
Yep.
let's do that. Okay. So I will need a potential motion to enter into executive session to discuss personal salary adjustments and invite Christine Hazard and fee accountant James Griffin. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to move into executive session.
May I have a second?
I think Pat's frozen. Oh, there she is. Maybe it's just me.
Pat, are you there?
Oh, come on.
Oh, I just heard
Come
you.
on.
I think we can hear you, Pat.
Was that a second?
Sometimes if you just turn your camera off, Pat, it will it'll sort of allow you to talk without the camera. I don't know, sometimes it helps.
I'm having, can you hear me? I'm having computer problems. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
Um,
We just need you to
I can
second.
hear you. I
are
don't know
you
if you can
guys
hear
a
me.
second?
We can hear you.
There. Now I'm fine. I was having problems. Okay, I can see you now. I was just having some it wasn't responding, so I'm
Okay.
fine now. I was panicking.
Okay.
So fine.
Do you want to second the motion to go into executive session?
Okay, second it. I second the motion.
May I have a motion to resume regular meeting?
I make a motion to resume the regular meeting.
I'll second.
Um, opposed? No. Okay, let's go. So, any questions about the overall fiscal year 2025-2026 BHA budget?
Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
One question I had was several months ago, we talked about some things that were needed at some properties around security. And I just wanted to check in about that and if that's appropriate. to see
Yeah, we
that
have
with
set
those
us.
things.
Yeah, we have set aside some money for capital costs. Some of the capital costs are new doors at Samuel Elliott Apartments. We need to get new doors, security doors in the building. Whether we definitely are going to be replacing one set. There's three sets of doors. So one set, and which is where the underpass is, and then hopefully if we can't do it, and we'll try to get enough capital money to do all of them. And then also we have to do the balconies at Samuel Elliott. That made it into it. And I do think, James, how much money did we put towards security cameras?
Actually, I don't, was that did you give me that figure?
I know there was an $80,000, and I thought we might be able to do it over time, like do part of it.
Where was that at all of them or at Hayes?
Hayes.
There's $20,000 in the budget for Hayes. It says electrical, but I think that might have been the cameras.
No,
Or did you have something else?
that's electrical panels. We have
Oh, all
to
right.
upgrade those. So those we have to do those a couple every year until we get them all done. But then yeah, we'll have to put aside as well. I think we wanted to put aside $20,000 a year at Hayes and potentially more court to do cameras.
That's not currently in the budget, but again, I can add it and send it up to the board. The board can approve this budget and I can send a revised budget up for $20,000 more. If
Okay.
that's the number. I apologize.
That's okay.
Not,
I might have left it out when I sent it as well.
When it says security, what does that entail?
maybe that's why I think I left it out, because I think we're paying for some security costs now.
Okay.
So there's 25, almost 23,500 set aside in the contract cost line for security.
Okay.
So if that's, if that's where the cameras end up, that's where the cameras end up. If not, if we go over that, then we'll just say we can, we can assume that it could be possibly more. Maybe that's why I left it out there, because I think maybe that's what I increased it to. But
Okay.
either way, that's the conversation we're having at the board. Again, if there's something that the board wants to add or subtract or anything like that, Christine and I go back about this every year that Christine's still, and we're trying to figure out how we want to spend the replacement reserve funds. So again, these costs that we have in the budget for door replacement, electrical upgrades, the balconies, any camera work you want to do that's significant. I mean, we can put it in the budget and take it out of operations, or the board could just approve that we take it out of the replacement reserve and simply use the dollars from there, therefore not affecting the actual bottom line on the budget. And that should be something the board should discuss and vote on at the time of the expense. So if Christine comes back and says it's going to cost $20,000, we have 12 or 15, and we have 12 in the budget for the doors. If it costs 15, and for some reason the board would rather take it out of the replacement reserves for that expense, they should vote on it at that time. And that's something Christine and the staff should do about moving the money from one bank account to another. But this is the first time we actually, in the budget, we put in for some capital needs. And if you look, I actually have offsetting replacement reserve funds to offset those costs. So again, you don't have to take it out of there, but we just built the budget with it coming out of there. Again, it's a decision for the board at the time when the expense is made. I mean, if we're doing really well and you want to leave it in the operations, you could do that. Or if we're doing really poorly, then we certainly probably want to take our replacement reserves.
Yeah.
Just like this year, we haven't had the conversation yet, but as I'm sure Christina's mentioned to you, we bought some laundry equipment. We brought that truck. Again, that's probably something that the board should consider. And I would recommend that we take the money from the replacement reserves for those expenses.
Yeah, we've
'Cause
been, we've been really careful not to use our replacement reserves, right? We haven't wanted to. I think we wanted to build them up. Like we felt like we didn't, we wanted to make sure that we had enough. I know we're allocating more this year than we have in the past, right? So we're gonna.
This budget has a 3% increase over what you were doing in last year's budget, correct?
Yeah. And so, but I do think it's a conversation. I think for a few years, we really wanted to get that into a place where it felt safer. And then, and we did have some required things that we needed to do for RAD, and we didn't take it out of the reserve. They could have been taken out of the reserves. We decided not to. We decided to do it out of operating. So I think that's a question as we're doing some of these bigger projects. Looking at taking them out of our reserves, I think probably makes sense. But the money is the money, right? It's like there's only the money. It's not like there's more money if we do one or the other, but for me, it always feels more comfortable to work out of the operating, but I do think that it probably makes sense.
Oh no, Christine, you and I think the same way. That I'm a big believer that, how do I say it nicely? I think the operating results should show everything, and then we see where we end up. And then if things look, we're uncomfortable. Like right now, I think when I looked at the February budget comparative, we're missing budget by about $100,000. But that would be the truck and the laundry equipment. So the argument there is that if we just take those funds from the replacement reserve, then we've hit our budget and operations, which means we did a pretty good job. Or again, we don't have to. I think that the reserves are almost up to $975,000. So there's money there. So again, it's just a decision for the board on how again, you're not getting any more money, as Christine said. It's just whether we just take it out of one cash account and replace it to another.
Yeah, we are going to be getting like appraisals for things like Samuel Elliott roof liner, things like that this year that we might end up that we just didn't have to put in the budget to estimate. It's a spring. We need to get somebody out there in the spring to really look at the roof. That to me would be like, wow. Then I think we'll be grateful that we have this money in the reserves that we could say like this is going to be a big cost. And so, I think right now, I think we can look at the budget and we can decide what we want to do. But I think when we decide on the reserves, I think we should make that decision looking at when we close out the fiscal year, where we want to go and where we're at.
That makes sense. So, we'll wait until then to discuss the reserves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll close the books in May. We'll have bottom line, we'll see where the results are at. And if the board decides at that time that they, want Christine to move, say, what I'm just using round numbers, $100,000 out of the replacement reserves for the truck and the laundry equipment because they feel more comfortable that's where it comes from, then we do it. If we don't, we don't. Either way, it can be done after the fact.
But as for the cameras, we want to put, I wanted to start with that a $20,000 amount for Hayes and see where we go. I think the overall cost was $80,000. I just think that that's way too much for us to spend on cameras. So I'd rather, start small and do what we can and then build the system up over time. I'm just afraid, as much as people want cameras, there are other needs that are just super important that I'm just hesitant to spend that amount on that. If, we can always throw up Arlo cameras if we need them. We've seen an increase in the police being on the properties. We've just, we have much more coordinated service. I just, but that's really, if the boards are feeling really like we need to do that, I think that's something that we should have a conversation about. But it is, for that property especially, it's very expensive to put those cameras up in every hallway. Because it's nine buildings.
And we did spend a significant amount on the new lock system, right?
Yeah, we're installing the new locks as of in the spring. We wanted to wait until the weather was better so that people didn't get locked out in the winter, but
Yeah.
we are doing that. Whether people want, I think people don't necessarily want it, but to me that seems like a better safety. That's a better safety precaution than the cameras. The cameras don't prevent anything, but the locks will.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the budget? No, this was really helpful. Thank you, James and Christine, so much. May I have a potential motion to approve the fiscal year 2025-2026 BHA budget?
Make the motion to approve the fiscal year 25-26 BHA budget.
I will second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I think James, you're off the hook if you wanted to head out.
If you don't mind, I will take my leave.
Okay.
Again, I appreciate your time. And if there are any other concerns or questions, feel free to reach out to Christine and she will reach out to me. But again, thank you again for your time and I will be talking to you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving right along. So, I have one more week of the check signing, for check signing assessments for March. And Commissioner Green has signed up for April.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I
do
can
we
take
know
May.
who's up for May? Is it Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay,
May'll be good.
great. And then we'll wait to do June's when we have more people.
Great. Thanks.
Great. Special projects update, the Melrose redevelopment. We had a letter dated March 13th. Any questions or comments?
I'm really happy with the way things are moving along and the approach, very, very happy with all that. Seem to be taking the residents' needs and the town needs and all the technical details. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and we just put a request for proposals, an RFP out for an attorney specializing in this. That was just posted on Friday. Thanks to Chris Hart, she worked on that a lot. So that was great. And we are, Chris and I are talking about potentially who we could bring in to run some resident meetings. I think it would be helpful to have somebody that wasn't a BHP person, I think it's good to have a moderator, somebody that can come in and do that. I think there's a lot of, I've learned there's a lot of, strong feelings around housing, and I think I don't want to bring my own personal bias or um feelings into it. So I think it's important to have somebody do it. So we're having some conversations about that to run some community meetings.
That's good. I was reading Chloe Leary's project up at Winston Prouty, they're anticipating, maybe this will anticipate an appeal here too. I don't know. Sure hope not.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think we're in a good place because this has already been housing and it was allocated for 80 units and we're only putting 31, but anything can happen. So, but I think that we are in a little bit of a different situation than they are, but we'll see. Yeah. Either way, we want to be really sensitive to people, to community feelings, regardless if we have if they don't have the right to appeal, we still want to work with our neighbors and community to make sure that people want this, and that we are, really taking their concerns into consideration. Yeah. So I know I just recently got a report from Dan that we are having, someone's coming out to appraise the property, which I think is part of the application process for some of our funding. So that's happening on Monday. So that's another thing that's happening. We are meeting bi-weekly, which has been good. And so things are starting to move a little faster. I think once we really find out, like, if we're going to have this funding, then I think the board we'll have to make some pretty big decisions around where we want to move the offices, and that's going to be the next thing. So, yeah, it's a little bittersweet.
Are we ready to move on to safety?
We'll go before too long here.
You're breaking up again, Michelle. You may need to turn your camera off again. I think you're frozen.
Yeah, we must have be having a weather issue.
Yeah, it's been happening all day. With the wintry mix. Sorry, Michelle.
Well, I'll just really quickly give a safety update. So we had a all staff training on Friday with the sheriff, Mark Anderson, an in-staff training. And we broke up into 2 groups. That was excellent. Everybody had a 2-hour session of that. And we talked a lot about safety, which I also think, brought up some, new ideas. And that was sort of my hope, is that I was feeling like people are having a really hard time talking about it. And so it brought up sort of like some blind spots of ours, and figuring out what we need as staff to feel safe, whether it's in our offices or on sites. And so that was I felt like that really got us going. So we're gonna do that again with him. And I think that's been really helpful. We're also hopefully going to have the resident survey, which is next on the agenda, that will give us more indication of what people are feeling on the properties. We're doing more meetings, so we're scheduling a meeting at the Samuel Elliott building because we've seen an uptick of people coming into the building. So we've been working with the police department. We've also had our surveillance, the security guards going in through that building more often. And we've been monitoring the cameras more frequently and sending that information to the police. And we'll have a resident meeting in early April with the police and staff. So I hope that gets sort of people talking again about what, some concerns. We've looked at some issues that we wanted to rectify. So we met with the fire department today to see if it was okay to permanently lock the windows on the first floor of the hallways, because we were finding that people were getting access to the building that way. And so that we did get approval. They didn't see any reason why we can't permanently lock them because they're not a means of egress. And so we'll be doing that. And then also creating some barriers for under the stairwells. We find that that's kind of where people will end up. And so we're going to be creating some barriers there. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can. And the police have been very helpful in coming on the property and checking out, making sure the doors are locked, walking through, and as has the security guards. So Pat, have you seen people coming through the building to like either the security guard or the police in the last week or?
Yes, I, this afternoon, and they have what they call the BRAT.
Yeah.
We have the officer, and I guess they, of course, at night, I wouldn't know, but I guess people at different times at night have seen them come through. A lot of it's it was the brat team because they were police officers, but they didn't have the gun, so they just thought they were police officers. But they are coming through pretty regularly. But it's sad they get in. People get in, people let them in. It's hard to control, but if you get enough guidelines, and I think just them walking through is a big help. There's a police presence, even the brat team is in some kind of a uniform. So to see something coming through, I think they do feel safer.
That's good. Yeah, they've been really wonderful to work with. They're very proactive. I think I'm really grateful for the police department. I think that collaboration has been really helpful and they respond really quickly when we have a concern. And so that has been really helpful. I think it does make a difference. I think people don't realize that we kind of nip some things in the bud really quickly. Like when we see an uptick, we try to react really quickly so that it doesn't get worse. And so that's what we're doing. And so I'm grateful that they've been so great about collaborating. And I think that once we get those windows to be secured permanently on the first floor, I think that will also make a big difference. We're also going to be posting more and more signs that say like no trespassing, in like all the hallways in the, in common areas so that, that's something that we learned that like, even though we can't trespass people from the whole building necessarily, we can, if we put those signs up, it makes it easier to trespass people and ask people to leave. Keeping us on our toes. But I'm grateful that residents reach out and let us know too, because sometimes we just don't know. So that's been good. And we've tried to increase our staffing over there. So we've added the SASH coordinator to work more hours at the Samuel Elliott building right now.
Sounds great. Thank you for being so responsive.
Great. Last on the list is before board business, but is resident survey.
So we are hoping to have the resident surveys go out in April. I know I put a copy in last month's agenda, but we added a couple of questions around safety to that. And so we're hoping that those go out in April. We have a plan in place to sort of start to roll those out. So that is our plan. And then we can report back to the board, hopefully sometime in May.
Okay. Great. Any board business? I don't have anything on the list on the agenda.
Nope.
No. Okay. BHOI update.
So the BHOI board met last Wednesday night and they ratified the bylaws. So they had edited the bylaws and they ratified them and that has been completed. So that's really excellent news. And they've also went through the protocol for, how people can make suggestions for fundraising and how that goes to this board and back, and they didn't see any need for changes, so that's excellent. The next thing we're tackling is the finances. This will be the first year that we have to do a full, usually because we don't get enough money, that we only do it like a small like card tax return. We don't have to do the full tax return. But this year, for the first time, we'll have to do a full tax return because we made more than $50,000 in donations. So that's good news. And so they'll be working on the tax return date isn't April 15th, it's later. So we signed a contract with Markham, who does our fiscal audit, to do the tax return for us. And so we'll be looking at the finances next and diving into that and seeing how they want to set up the monthly reports and what information they want to see, and then hopefully we can get into some fun stuff like, applying for more money and figuring out what projects we want to work on. We have a fair amount of grants. We had a dental grant. We have a food grant for for Hayes Court and Samuel Elliott Apartments, and then we had this like community grant for 3 years for Moore Court and Ledgewood. So those are still ongoing. Yeah.
Do we still need to raise more money for the playground equipment? Is there still?
I think BHP contributed part of it, and so I think we're okay. I don't think I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And how many current members do we have? Is it 5 or 7?
No, it's not 7. It's 5.
5.
Yeah. I don't know the title for it, but I'm a voting member, but I'm not an ex-officio. I don't know if there's a term for it. I can't think of it right now.
Ex-officio, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Great.
So yes, we have a really good group of people. It's an awesome group of people. They're really great.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about BHOI? All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second the motion. Approved, aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you all. And thank you all for staying on so late. I know it was a lot. This is one of our big meetings, so I appreciate all your time on this. Thank you.
The
Okay,
budget
thank
meeting
you.
always goes over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations. We made it another year. See you in the next fiscal year in April. So,
Okay.
Ask Samuel Elliott.
yeah, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Yeah, thank you
Bye.
all. Bye. Have a great night.